Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me for today's webinar. Just to let you know, we'll be starting in a couple of minutes' time. We'll just be waiting 2 minutes just to let everyone in, get everyone all connected and sorted out. And then we'll say 2 minutes past, we'll get things underway. So just be, let's say, a little bit before we do crack on right away. And for everyone that's just joined, I say we'll be giving it another minute just for anyone else to join in and get everyone connected in before we do start today's webinar. So it'll just be another minute before we crack on. Okie dokie then, we shall get things underway. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this month's webinar on CoolCare, where we'll be looking at managing your calendar for Christmas. As I'm sure you're aware, Christmas getting closer and closer by the day, as it tends to do. My name's Sam. I'll be taking you through today's webinar. Just a couple of things to be aware of before we get started. Of course, CoolCare is here to make operating your care home easier, more efficient, and more profitable. And definitely those two, easier and more efficient at this time of the year, would be very nice to have. While we're using Zoom, if you need to ask any questions during today's session, you can do so using the Q&A option on Zoom. You'll be able to click on there, type up a little question, and my colleague Derek will be on hand to answer any questions you have regarding anything we go through in the session. And there'll be a little time at the end. We'll leave things open after we finish for you to answer any of the questions at the end of the session. So, with that in mind, what we'll be looking at today, like I say, is our calendar side of CoolCare. So we're looking at absences and holidays on CoolCare, understanding how to put those into the system and how to manage those through your calendar and seeing how that can affect your rotas and timesheets on there, because it's something that's, is used all around this time of year, holidays, absences of people around the festive season, and how I can also report on that on both the individual level for your staff members, as well as a more broad view if you need to as well on that. Without further ado, I'll swap over to my demo system and we'll get things underway. So, you just bear me 1 second and I can swap my screen over and hopefully we should all be able to see it in a moment. Right, so if I share my screen in a second. There it is. Right. So, let's say around this time of the year, you're going to have a lot of requests for people to take some time off, be it through a holiday or for other reasons on there. And we can add those all into CoolCare and see how it affects the different parts of the system in different ways. To add any of that information onto the system, the best way to do it is through, as you might guess, your calendar. Your calendar here handles holidays, absences, training. The idea being you put something on here. This is kind of the central place where all those are stored. And then that divvies that information out to the rest of the system to let it know about what's happening. So, for example, we can start by adding in a holiday request. So someone wants to take some time off around this time of the year, as I'm sure they would want to do. We'll say a staff member wants to take a couple of days off around Christmas. We're going to say the 23rd and the 24th, a staff member wants to take off for me. So to do that, we can add the holiday request on for them on here by clicking on the first date that we want to add it on for. So starting the holiday from the 23rd, and that's the date I'm going to click on. And that will then bring up this box for me, adding in a new calendar event. As you can see on the calendar here, we can put in holiday requests, absences, and training. To start with, we'll be looking at the holiday requests. So if I click on that there, it takes me to this page here, a new holiday request, where it's just asking all the details of what this is for. So first thing we need to choose is which staff member. So you can just click the drop-down box up there, and that'll give you a list of all your staff in the home that you can choose from on there. I'm going to go with Amelia, the very top one. And then it'll ask you when the holiday is for. So by default, it will just do it for a single day, so just the 23rd that I've selected as a starting point. But you can change the end date there and make that a little bit longer. So we can do it for 2 days, the 23rd and the 24th, up to Christmas Eve. There. And those days will then appear on the right-hand side and all start as requested. And I'm going to leave those as requested for the moment. So if I save that, that adds our whole request into the calendar to say someone needs to deal with that and get that either authorized, declined, or whatever it might be. The good thing is the staff members can actually do that first step themselves by the staff portal. If you do use that in your homes, the staff members will be able to go onto their staff portal on their mobiles, put in that request, and then that would show up on your calendar on here. And you'll be able to spot it as well through your dashboard. We'll go back to my dashboard here, filled with different widgets that can look at different parts of the system. The one I've got on the right-hand side there, the calendar actions required, which my guess is while looking at our calendar. As you can see there, that request that I've added on pops up in here, tell me Amelia Watson, a senior carer, has asked for the 23rd and the 24th off on there, as you can see. And if I click on that request from the widget, it will then take me to my calendar. It even pops it into a 2-week view, so it's a bit more zoomed in and easier to see. And you can even see there it's flashing at me, the one that I need to deal with. Obviously, quite obvious in my case because I've got nothing else in there. But if you have a lot going on your calendar, you'd be able to easily spot which one's required looking at through it. So if I then click on that request on there, as we can see, it was just as I left it in there. You got some details of the staff members' holding entitlements and hours in there. So their accrued entitlements for the year so far, their total entitlement for the entire year, and that's their contracted hours, and if that's changed throughout the year, what it's changed from, and that's, and their total requested hours, how much holiday they've actually requested off in this request. And those hours are calculated from these hours on the right-hand side. Now, these hours can be picked up automatically from your rota. If they're on a repeating shift pattern, they can be picked up from there. Alternatively, you can put them in manually as well and change those. So this would be the gross hours. As you can see, they're 12-hour shifts on that. I'm actually going to change that down to 11 hours because the hours on here won't take into account any breaks that might be set up for the staff members. So in my case, they would only actually need 11 hours taking off rather than 12. And then you can see next to that, you've got the option to mark these as authorized or declined. So authorized, yep, you can have those days off. That's perfectly fine. And you can see the entitlements there on the left-hand side go down to what those will be down to. Or if they can't have the days off, you can mark those as declined, and it will just leave everything as it is to say, nope, you can't have those days off, and that will be that. But in this case, we're going to be nice. I'm going to authorize those days off for Amelia. Once I then save that, you can see this box will pop up. Because I've got my rotas up and running on CoolCare, it will ask me, do I want to take the person off those rotas for those days? In this case, the 23rd and the 24th. I can take them off the shifts that they were originally planned to be on if I say yes to that. And that's going to do a few things. On the calendar here, it marks it with a little green underline to say it's been authorized. That's all good on there. And if I check on my rota, we can see in here, if I were to go to the 23rd, which I can do on my rota just by clicking in the top left corner there where the date currently is, I can skip forward a few weeks to the 23rd on there. And that will take me straight to that date. And if I open my care days, where Amelia is normally working as a senior carer, we can see there the 23rd and the 24th are now unassigned shifts. So they've been taken out of them, and they show even says holiday on there to say this person's been removed from that shift because of a holiday on that day. So it's easily done through there. And as we saw previously, if you were there on our last month's webinar, we can then fill in those shifts with cover and find who we need to do those shifts based on that by clicking into them and seeing who's available. So that's how your holidays there can affect your rota just by taking them off the shift. Remember, whenever you save it, it will always ask you yes or no if you need to take the person off the shift. Just be aware it does do that even if they're not on the rota for those days. It will ask you regardless, just to be safe on that. So I would usually recommend saying yes if you need to take them off the shift, just in case they're on somewhere that you might not be aware of that. So that is your holidays there. But what does happen when not on holiday? What if they're called in sick or they're off for any reason for a different kind of leave, anything like that? Anything that's not a holiday, we would add on via an absence in CoolCare instead. And this could be for a number of reasons, as I've just said on that. And these can be tracked again through the same calendar. Now, I'm just going to nip back to my dashboard quickly to show you. The staff on shift widget here tells me about which my staff members are currently in my home at the moment and who should be in based on my rota. And I've got one staff member here, Vicky, who is AWOL. In this case, which means they're on the rota, but they're not clocked in. They've not shown up today. So this person is absent. And so we can add the details of that absence for them into my calendar. So once again, go to my staff section and into the calendar on there. Rather than adding in a holiday, this time we're going to be doing it as an absence. And to add that in, You'd click on the day you want to add it in for, so I can do it for today's dates, which is when Vicky's obviously not here. So I click on today, it then brings up that same box again, and this time we're going to be doing an absence. So if I click into that, it then pops up with this. It's a similar kind of layout to our holiday request. It asks for the same kind of information, as you can see, the allocated staff member who it would be for, which in this case is the very bottom of my list, okay, and when the absence is for. So with the absences, you can choose the dates, you can even choose the individual times if it's just part of the day they're absent for. But in this case, we're just going to leave it as today's dates, not more about changing the times in there, that's all fine. And with absence, it also asks you for a reason. Now, these reasons can be customized on your system, so you might see different options in yours compared to mine, but they're controlled by your lookups. If you have access to those, you can change those reasons for absence in that. So we're going to say Vicky's called in sick today, so we're going to pop it in as a short-term sickness. And like the holiday, it will add in the hours if they're on a repeating shift pattern from the rota. And as a default in CoolCare, they will start off as unauthorized absences. Just while we're investigating it, still finding out what's going on, I'm going to keep it as unauthorized for now. Once you've kind of confirmed everything about the absence and you want to let the rest of CoolCare know about it, you want to let the rest of the system be aware of this, you'd mark it as authorized. Authorizing it is, I guess, similar to authorizing the holiday in the sense that it's going to take them off the rota and add that hours onto the timesheet and mark that as an authorized absence. But with absences as well, you've got a few extra options underneath, as you can see. These tick boxes here. You've got a continuing absence, where you can mark it essentially as an open-ended absence. So if someone's said, they're not well, we're not sure when they're going to be better to come back, so we're going to mark it as a continuing absence, and that absence will just update itself day by day to say it's a day longer, a day longer. So if I was to check on this tomorrow, the absence would then be up to the 5th, etc. in there. So rather than you having to come in day by day and keep updating it manually, the continuing absence can just do that for you if you want to. You can mark it as a self-certified absence, just a tick box there to say, self-certified sickness, that kind of thing in there. Or if they're off sick again, you can also have, if they've got a doctor's notes, tick that box there. And you could even add in an expiry for that as well to say when they'd be able to be off for. So those are just some additional options with our absences there. There's also a notes box, which both shows up on the absences and the holidays. So just any extra information, you can pop them in under that if you need to. But in this case, we've got that marked as authorized. That's all good now. We can then save it. Again, like saving the holiday, this absence will ask if I need to take the person off the rota for this day, which in this case, I can say yes to that. And that will then add the absence onto the calendar here. And as you might notice underneath, Vicky's also got a holiday request in here that was declined for today. And if I were a more suspicious man, I might think that something's happened there where Vicky's decided to take the day off, even though she wasn't allowed it as a holiday. She's just decided to pull a sickie instead. And that's a good thing with the calendar here, is you can spot things like that. If you've got these holiday requests in there, where they've been authorized or declined, you can easily spot if someone's, taking a day off where they shouldn't be, that kind of thing. You can easily get around it and keep an eye on things from there. But with that absence also authorized in here, it is going to affect my rota, as I mentioned before. We can see through that. So if I go to today's dates, straight away, we've got the absence there for Vicky, and it even says absence, and the shift is just unassigned. And if I click into the shift, it works again like any others. Holidays and absences do show up in this other events column on a shift, so you can see there the absence has been popped in for Vicky on that. And same goes to say, if I was to check Amelia's on the 23rd, you might have spotted it before, but in the other events, you can see the holiday authorized in there as well. That's an extra thing that will be affected by this as well is if I go back to my dashboard, once again on here, the staff on shift widget is now no longer showing Vicky is AWOL. Because she's not on the rota anymore, it's no longer showing that she should be in, thus she's not AWOL on the system. But we do have that absence in the calendar instead to show they're on there instead. So yes, as I say, anything you add onto the calendar can be shown on your rota, and you'll be able to spot there when people are off shifts, and it will affect the system in different ways from that. But the other thing the calendar shifts affect is your timesheets. So the hours from the calendar will go across to the timesheet and show us hours on there, which can be further exported out to payroll if required. So we go to our timesheets, we can just show you how it looks on there. Firstly, whenever you're opening your timesheet, it will go to your current week and show you anything we've got going on. And so we can immediately spot the absence on today's dates. 12 hours, and it says because A has got an absence in there. And if I click into that, it includes there these additional hours, which are the absence hours. And the notes there will be the reason for the absence. So you got all the information on the absence through the timesheets on here. You see it as that. And a similar kind of thing for your holiday. If we were to go to the 23rd, we can see on there, we've got two 11-hour holidays in there, and it says a little H there for a holiday on that one. And we can just see under additional hours, 11 holiday hours in that. Now, one thing to be aware of with these holidays and absences on the timesheet is they show as orange to say they're not snapped to shift. Usually that would be where someone's clocked in late or clocked out early or done something out of the ordinary. But in this case, they show as orange because they don't clock in and out for those holiday shifts or the absences. So by default, the system will just show them as orange. That's just the way it kind of works on CoolCare's side. But that's why they've got the little letter next to them, so you can easily spot where they're different. So yeah, a H for a holiday or an A for an absence on that. So if you see the orange one with a little letter next to it, that just means it's something from your calendar rather than something you need to worry about in terms of changing the shift and updating the hours on there as you normally would in timesheets. Like I say, so again, anything you do on the calendar just carries over to the rota, to the timesheet as well, and you can easily spot all of that in one place. What if we want to report on some of this information? So we want to see kind of the absences or holidays for someone. There's a couple of ways you can see all this information rather than having to spool through your calendar and your timesheets, etc. for that. Firstly, if you wanted to see it on an individual level, we can go to our staff records and into our staff members. So for example, Amelia here. Under the T&A tab on your staff record, you'll have the option for holidays, where you can see the staff members' holiday entitlements and all its kind of how it's all worked out and what they've got remaining. But you can see on the right-hand side here, you've got a list of all the holidays a staff member's taken. So you can see here all the holidays a staff member has had throughout this year. As you can see, I use them a lot, but right down the bottom, you got the 23rd and the 24th at the bottom that we added in earlier today. So it's just when the holidays are added in, they'll pop up in here to say what holidays they've had and how many hours they've used on each one. You also can see on the actual hours itself, you've got the total entitlement for the full year, so how much holiday they've got for the full year in total, and their booked hours, how much of that they've used up already, 324 hours in this case. Staff members got a lot of holiday on mine here. And one right down the bottom, the total entitlement remaining is just how much holiday they have to use up for the rest of the year. And that total entitlement remaining is also what's communicated to your staff members on the staff portal. If they're using that to put in holiday requests, they can see how much holiday they've got remaining through that. So that's where you can see the holidays for your staff member if you need to. But also through this T&A tab, just under holidays, you've got absences. So you can see all the absences a staff member has had within a selected date range. By default, it will go from the start of your holiday year up to yesterday, but you can change those dates in there if you want to narrow it down, broaden it in there. So you can see the dates of the absences they've had, the start date and end dates when the absences were, the number of hours total of that absence, and the number of days total of each absence as well. The reason for the absence, so the reason you just popped in when the absence was created, if you popped in a date notified on the absence, and also which user authorizes the absence as well. So you can see which user in your system actually authorizes absence if you would need to as well. Then on the right, you've got some total hours of absence, authorized, unauthorized on there, as well as a Bradford factor score based on their last year's worth of absences in there. And I always do the last year's worth based on, despite whatever date range you might be using on there. And you can even print this page off as well. You can even get a paper copy out of the system directly from there. So that's an easy way of seeing those things for just an individual staff member if you need to kind of narrow down on one person. But what if we want a bit more of a broader view? Well, that's where our reports come in handy. So under your staff section, right down the bottom, you've got the reports in there. And on any reports page in CoolCare, you'll find this button in the top right corner that says Show Descriptions. If you click that, it gives us a nice explanation of what each report does. What we're interested in are these three here, the absence and holiday reports. We have the staff absence report to start with, which will export all the absences within a selected time frame on there. So if I click the staff absence, choose what dates I want to do it for. I could do it for, say, honestly, all from my previous month, all from November. Choose my date range. I can include leavers in that report if I want to as well. But if I were to produce that, it just pops it as an Excel spreadsheet report on there. And we'll load that up. There we are. That's a list of all the absences from my home within the month of November. It tells me which staff member it's for, the date of the absence, the hours total, when the absence started and ended, the reason if it was authorized or unauthorized, and the reason for the absence as well, as you can see, all in one place. So it gives you plenty of information to report on for the absences in there. A good way of seeing an overview of absences on that side. Then you've got the holiday details. This one is a good way of exporting essentially all your staff members' holiday entitlements, all they've got, what they've used up, what they've got remaining, seeing it all in one go. And this one's slightly special. If I were to run this one as a PDF specifically and do it for a certain date range, so I could do it for all of November again, and produce that report, it shows me two things. So firstly, the reports, when it loads up, we'll give it a moment. There we are. I'll just zoom in slightly so we can see a bit better. It will tell you about the staff members, every staff member's holiday entitlement, what they've got accrued, brought forward, their total for the full year, how much they've taken, and how much they have remaining. So you can see that all in one place for each person. But with this PDF version specifically, it will also tell you about any holidays the staff members have taken within your specified date range. So in my case, for the month of November. So for example, Harry Johnson here, he took 1 day off the 1st of November, and that used 11 hours of his entitlements. So we can see it in there. We'll just scroll down, see if we've got any others. Here, there's a good example. Once again, would you believe it's Amelia Watson on that? Again, what she's accrued, brought forward, the total for the full year, what she's taken off, and the holiday remaining. And you can see all the holidays she had throughout November, 8 days at the end for a total of 92 hours. And this report, you can save this to computer, you can print it off if you want to on there. It's also available as an Excel version, as a CSV, but that would just give you just the totals, not the actual holiday taken on that one. So that's your holiday details. A good way for an overview of seeing everyone in one go. Holiday accrual is a bit more of a, I guess, if you want to narrow things down slightly, it shows you the holiday that has been accrued and taken within a specified date range. So if I run that one, I can choose whatever date I want to. So again, we're going to do it for the month of November, and it will ask you for an accrual date as well. We're going up to the end of November as well. And this one is, again, an Excel spreadsheet like our absence reports. And when it loads up, it'll show you all your staff members, but it'll give you some holiday figures based on the specific date range we've chosen. So in this case, we're looking at for the month of November. We can see what they brought forward for the year. You get their holidays accrued up to the accrual dates for the year so far. So in that case, that's up until the end of November on mine. The entitlements between the start and end dates, so what they've accrued in the month of November, in my case here. That's entitlements plus their holiday brought forward, which you can easily spot with Amelia there, the extra 200 hours on that. What holidays they've taken up until their accrual date, so up to the end of November, again in there, and what holiday they have remaining at the end of all that as well. So if you want to kind of see something a bit more specifically on there, a bit more narrow it down to a certain date range, you can use the holiday accrual reports on there. Best way to think of it is holiday details is for your full year, holiday accrual is for specified dates on there. But yes, plenty of ways of seeing that holiday absence of the staff members through the reporting on here. And remember, whenever you're on any reports page in CoolCare, if you click that little show descriptions up in the top right corner, it gives you a nice explanation of what each report does if you're looking for something in particular. And that would be all to show you for today's webinar this month. So just a couple extra things to show you before we finish up. Just go back to my presentation. Here we are. So did you know you might be entitled to free training on CoolCare? Every customer has at least 2 30-minute free of charge training sessions as part of their subscription to CoolCare. You can contract our training team to check your entitlements if you've got any available, and if you want to book that in, we can get that sorted. We can cover anything you'd want, be it your calendars, your staffing, it could be your residents, inquiries, invoicing, or just a general Q&A even. Whatever you might want a little additional training on, you may be able to do it through one of our 30-minute sessions on there. You can email us training@coolcare.co.uk, or you can phone our team 0113 385 3853, and we can help you out, like I say, with anything you might need. And finally, all that's left to say is thank you for joining me on today's webinar. And next month, in the new year, we'll be looking at reducing agency cover. So using CoolCare in different ways to reduce your agency usage within the home. So thank you all for joining. I say we'll stick around for 5 minutes if you've got any other questions or anything else you want to ask us about. But if not, thank you all for joining me and have a nice rest of your day.